The envelope felt heavier than it looked. Not because of weight, but because of what it didn't say. I stood by the window, the paper trembling between my fingers, reading the names over and over like they might change if I stared long enough. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. That's it. No, and family. No, Ms. Eleanor Johnson. Not even plus guest. Just them. My son. His bride. A wedding. And somehow, I wasn't counted. I've never wanted to cry over something as simple as an envelope before. But at 73, there are fewer things that truly surprise me. This burned. I raised Michael on my own since he was 5. His father left. Not even a goodbye. Just a stack of unpaid bills and an empty promise of, I'll come back once I'm stable. He never did. We never had much, but I gave him everything. Cut coupons. Sewed clothes. Worked double shifts at the diner where people barely saw me unless they needed more ketchup. And Michael? He was a good kid. Always quiet. Always watching. He used to sit by the booth at the corner, coloring while I rushed orders and cleaned up after people who didn't care whether I had a life outside of that place. I thought we were close. I thought he'd never forget how we built everything together from nothing. But the wedding invite told me otherwise. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I tried to call him, just to ask how he was feeling. Maybe slip in a gentle, joking, "You planning to seat your old mother next to the coat rack or the exit?" But he didn't pick up. Not the first time. Not the 5th. I sent a text. Got the invite. Thank you. It sat there. Delivered. Never read. I convinced myself maybe it was a mistake. That maybe it was just a printing error. I mean, people use those fancy online templates these days. Maybe it automatically added just the couple's names. But then Clara called. Clara was his fiancée's mother. And Clara doesn't call to chat. "Oh, Eleanor, darling. I just wanted to say how excited we are. Such a small, intimate gathering. Only family, you know." I hesitated. "Of course," I replied. "So I imagine Michael's side will be small too?" She laughed. "Oh, you know how boys are. It's mostly just his college friends and some of Ethan's family. You've met Ethan, right? Clara's cousin? From Chicago?" I hadn't. She continued, breezing through the call like she was reciting a guest list from a catalog. "Not once did she mention me. Not once." I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the wind scrape the tree branches against the siding. What hurt wasn't just that I wasn't listed. It was that I wasn't seen. Like I was a relic, a worn-out coat folded in the back of a closet, too familiar to appreciate and too old to throw away outright. What kind of mother doesn't get invited properly to her own son's wedding? The next day, I packed my old suitcase. The brown leather one with the busted zipper that Michael once duct-taped for me when we took the Greyhound to visit my sister in Oregon. He was 12 then, and I remember how proud he looked carrying it for me. I took it out, not knowing where I'd go. Not yet. But I knew I wouldn't sit around and cry into the lace tablecloth that used to cover our tiny Christmas dinners. I pulled out every old letter, every school photo, every crayon-drawn card that said, "To the best mom in the world." I laid them on the bed. I stared at them until my eyes blurred. Then I took a picture from his high school graduation, the one where he had his arms slung over my shoulders, grinning so wide you'd think he won the lottery. I tucked it into my purse. Because if I was going to be forgotten, I wanted to remember I had not forgotten him. A few days before the wedding, I did something I never thought I would. I went to visit Henry. Henry was Michael's father. We hadn't spoken in 38 years. I wasn't even sure if he still lived in that broken house on Lexington Street, the one that always smelled like motor oil and missed apologies. But when I knocked, he answered. His hair was white now. Mine too. But his eyes, they still had that same pale gray regret I remembered. "Ellie." I didn't correct him. "I need a ride," I said. He blinked. "Where to?" "To Michael's wedding." He paused. I wasn't invited. Neither was I. We drove 6 hours in silence. The old truck groaned against the hills, and the radio played 80s ballads we once slow danced to in our kitchen before everything fell apart. I didn't tell Henry what I planned to do, because truth be told, I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to sit home and let my absence be a quiet footnote. If I was invisible, then I would make them see me. The church was small, white-bricked with ivy crawling up the side. There were lanterns hanging from shepherd hooks, candles lit, delicate string music playing as guests filed in, all dressed in shades of pastel and champagne gold. I stayed near the back. People smiled politely at me, assuming I was just another old aunt, maybe from the bride's side. No one asked. No one recognized me. Not even Michael. Not when he walked down the aisle in a fitted navy suit, eyes glowing with joy and nerves. I watched him kiss his bride's hand. I watched them exchange rings. I watched it all from a pew near the back, alone, a mother attending her son's wedding like a stranger watching a play. And still he didn't see me. But at the reception, something changed. The microphone crackled. Michael raised a glass. To love, and to the people who taught us what love really looks like. He looked at Clara and her husband. To the people who gave us everything we needed to believe in forever. The crowd clapped, laughed, and I stood, slowly, hands trembling. Someone whispered. Heads turned. I walked toward him not with anger, but with memory, with grief, with every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every shift I worked so he could have cleats and books and braces. He saw me then. For the first time in years he really saw me. His smile faded. His mouth opened. Mom. But I kept walking. Right past him. And without a word. I placed the photograph on the gift table. The one from his graduation. On the back, I had written, Love remembers, even when others forget. Then I turned. And left. The parking lot was nearly empty by the time I reached the truck. Henry was still sitting behind the wheel, the engine idling low, smoke curling up from the cigarette he hadn't lit. He turned to me. Well, I didn't answer right away. I sat down beside him and closed the door. For a moment, the silence between us stretched as wide as the road ahead. Then I said, I left him a picture. Henry didn't push for more. He just nodded, then shifted into gear. We drove the first half hour in silence, the night folding around us like an old coat. And then, somewhere between mile marker 42 and 43, I started to cry. Quiet, steady tears. Not angry, not hysterical, just tired. Tired in the kind of way that builds over years and finally breaks through when no one is looking. I thought, I said softly, I'd raised him better than this. Henry kept his eyes on the road. You did. Then why wasn't I enough to be acknowledged? Why am I just an invisible part of his past? The truck hummed beneath us, the road stretching forward like a question without an answer. Henry sighed. People forget where they come from. Or maybe they remember, but it's too heavy to carry with them into the life they think they want. I turned to him. Is that what happened with you? His jaw tightened. Yes, he said. Exactly that. The next morning, I woke up in my quiet house, my wedding outfit folded neatly on the chair beside my bed. I made myself coffee, poured it into the same chipped mug I've used for 15 years, and sat at the kitchen table where I used to help Michael with homework. There was no text, no call. Part of me expected one. But a bigger part of me knew I wouldn't hear from him right away. He was on his honeymoon now, likely sipping wine in some resort, posing for perfect pictures to post online. I wasn't angry. No, I was hollow. Because even though I had done what I needed to do, even though I stood tall and reclaimed a piece of myself, it didn't change the ache that lingered afterward. That ache of knowing. He had let me go a long time ago. I had just finally let go in return. A week passed. Then two. I kept busy. I baked a little more than usual. I cleaned out the attic. I visited the library just to sit in the silence, surrounded by stories that never forgot their characters. Then one afternoon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Michael stood there. He looked different. Not in appearance, he still had that same dimple on his left cheek, the same cleft in his chin. But there was something in his eyes, something heavy. Like he had finally looked back at everything he tried to outrun. He held something in his hand. It was the photo, the one from graduation. He didn't speak right away. He just held it out to me. I took it gently, surprised to feel that the back had been written on again. In fresh ink, underneath my note, were 5 shaky words. I never stopped needing you. I looked up at him, my throat thick. I didn't come to fight, he said. I just needed to say I was wrong. I thought I could create this perfect new life. But it doesn't feel whole. It doesn't feel right without you. I let him in. We sat on the couch, 2 feet of space between us and 40 years of memories in the air. I thought you'd be mad, he said. I was, I answered. But mostly I was hurt. Michael nodded. I didn't mean to exclude you. It wasn't deliberate. Clara handled most of the planning. She said intimate weddings are easier, just immediate family and the couple. I thought you knew you were family. I didn't think I had to say it out loud. You always have to say it out loud, I whispered. especially to the people who need to hear it most. He looked down at his hands. I've been thinking about everything you did for me. Every sacrifice. Every late night. And I didn't want to bring those memories into the wedding. I didn't want to mix pain with celebration. I blinked. Your life with me wasn't just pain. He looked up, ashamed. I know that now. We sat for a long moment, the clock ticking gently in the background. I'm sorry, he finally said. I forgive you, I replied. But that doesn't erase the hurt. I don't want to erase it, he said. I want to learn from it. I smiled faintly. That's the only kind of apology worth offering. Over the next few days, Michael came by often. He brought groceries, sat on the porch with me, asked about stories from when he was a baby ones he used to roll his eyes at, but now listened to like scripture. Eventually, Clara came too. She brought flowers and a nervous smile. I think I've got a lot to learn about what family really looks like, she said. I didn't smile. Not at first. But I invited her in. And when I saw how she looked at Michael really looked, I believed she meant it. We sat around the same table where I once scraped by on toast and instant coffee. And this time there were fresh-baked scones and laughter in the air. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. A month later, Michael handed me an envelope. Inside was another invitation. Not to a wedding. To a dinner. He and Clara had organized a second gathering, just family. Real family. No decorators, no show, no pretenses. Just love and food and stories and space. He'd written the names by hand. And this time, the envelope said, "To Mom, the woman who made me who I am." I cried when I read it. Not because I was finally seen, but because, somehow, despite the years and the silence and the scars, I still mattered. Love doesn't always announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes, it's just the courage to say, I was wrong. Sometimes, it's the grace to answer, I'm still here. Later that week, I opened the old cedar chest in my bedroom. It was filled with scraps of our life drawings, ticket stubs, a single sock from his baby years I could never bring myself to throw away. I took them all out, one by one, and placed them on the kitchen table. When Michael visited again that Saturday afternoon, he stopped cold at the sight. What is all this? Our life, I said quietly. In pieces. Maybe it's time you help me put it back together. He stepped forward, slowly, picking up a torn edge of construction paper, a drawing of us at the zoo, a blue crayon lion in the background, two stick figures holding hands. I remember this, he whispered. I nodded. You made it the day after your dad left. Said you didn't want me to be sad anymore. You told me we were still a family, even if it was just the two of us. He stared at the page for a long time. I forgot saying that. I didn't, I said. He looked up, tears swimming in his eyes. How did you never hate me for forgetting so much? Because, I said, gently placing my hand over his. A mother's love doesn't expire when her child forgets. It just waits. We sat down at the table, surrounded by pieces of the past. He asked questions he'd never asked before. About my dreams. My disappointments. About what it was like raising him alone. Not out of obligation, but out of interest. It was the first time in years I felt like someone saw me not just as his mother, but as Eleanor. In the weeks that followed, I became something I hadn't been in a long time, included. Michael invited me to dinner with his friends not out of guilt, but because he wanted me there. Clara started calling just to chat. Once, she asked me for a recipe. That simple gesture meant more than flowers or apologies. I even started going out again. Henry, of all people, stopped by with coffee one morning. We sat on the porch, two old ghosts learning how to speak again after decades of silence. I'm glad you stood up for yourself, he said. You always did have more courage than me. I looked at him sideways. I just got tired of being quiet. He chuckled. Took you long enough. We didn't talk about the past much, not about why he left, not about the mess he made. But there was something healing in his presence. Not because I needed him, but because it reminded me that life could still surprise me. Sometimes, the people you think are finished with their chapters turn the page. Then one day I got sick. Not terribly, just one of those awful seasonal flus that knocks the wind out of you. Normally, I would have toughed it out alone. That's what I'd done for years. But this time, I didn't have to. Michael showed up with soup. Clara brought me tea and tissues. She sat beside me and rubbed my back when I coughed. And I realized the daughter-in-law I once resented was, in her own quiet way, trying to build a bridge too. One evening, as I lay curled on the couch, Clara tucked the blanket around my feet. I want you to know, she said softly. I didn't mean to shut you out. I know, I whispered. My own mom, she wasn't very present. She drank a lot. I thought having a small wedding was a way to protect myself. I never stopped to think that I might be hurting someone else in the process. I looked at her. Pain teaches us, but only if we let it. She nodded. I'm trying to. And in that moment, she wasn't the polished bride or the woman who'd accidentally erased me from the biggest day of my son's life. She was just a daughter, fumbling toward love the way I had so many years ago. I reached out and held her hand. The flu passed, but something else remained. A new closeness, a daily check-in, a softness that hadn't existed before. Then, Michael did something I never expected. He took me back to the diner, the one I used to work at when he was small, the one with the peeling booths and sticky menus and memories baked into the walls. It's still here, I said, stepping through the door. Barely, he said, laughing. But yeah. He led me to the same booth we always sat at, the one in the corner, near the window. And on the table, already waiting, was a small velvet box. I froze. What's this? I asked. Michael slid it toward me. Open it. I did. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet. On it, engraved in tiny, careful lettering, were the words, "To the woman who never stopped showing up." My hand trembled. I know it doesn't make up for what I missed, he said, but I want you to have something to carry every day that reminds you how much I love you. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, blinking away tears. He reached across the table and held my hand. You saved me, he said. For years, I didn't realize it. But now I do. You gave up everything, and I almost forgot to give you something in return. You don't owe me gifts, I whispered. I know, but you deserve them anyway. It's funny how one envelope, one omission can set fire to years of silence. How a single misstep can become the doorway back to something deeper. Now, when I look at that photo from his graduation, I no longer feel like a footnote. I feel like the preface, the prologue to the story that's still being written. And when people ask me about Michael, I smile. Not because he's perfect, not because I am, but because we found our way back. And that, I think, is the heart of love. It remembers, even when people forget. It waits, even when doors close. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to knock again, it opens. A month after Michael gave me the bracelet, I was invited to their house for Sunday dinner. Not just me this time, Henry, too. Clara insisted. She said, if we're going to rebuild, let's do it with all the pieces. So we came. I wore the bracelet. Henry wore a suit too big for his frame and a nervous grin that hadn't aged a day. Their house was beautiful. Warm-toned hardwood. Open kitchen. Family photos, though not many of us yet. Still, I saw one. Michael's graduation photo, framed on a side table. The same one I'd left at his wedding. It was subtle, but I noticed. And it mattered. Dinner was roast chicken, soft carrots, and homemade bread. Clara was a surprisingly good cook, or maybe she'd gotten the recipe from me after all. Henry cracked jokes about his old car and the time Michael flushed a Lego down the toilet. Michael groaned. I laughed harder than I had in years. It felt normal, like the family we never got to be all those decades ago. After dessert, Henry offered to drive home first. I stayed behind to help Clara with the dishes. That's when she asked, Eleanor, do you mind if I ask you something? I glanced at her, a bit cautious. Of course. She hesitated. Michael told me you used to dance. Like really dance. You wanted to do it professionally. My heart skipped a little. That was a story I hadn't told anyone in years, not even Michael, not fully. I did, I said, rinsing a plate. When I was young. Before marriage. Before bills. I wanted to be a ballet teacher. I had an offer to study in New York. What happened? I smiled, soft and sad. Life. Then Michael. Then survival. She dried the plate in her hands. Do you miss it? I think I missed the girl who believed it was possible. She didn't say anything. But the way she looked at me like I was more than just mom or mother-in-law, it warmed something in me. A week later, Michael showed up again. But this time, he wasn't alone. He had a folded pamphlet in his hand. It was for a community center. Dance classes. Seniors group. A program called Second Steps for retired adults who once trained in dance or music and wanted to reconnect with it. He held it out like a peace offering. Thought you might want to try. I laughed. I haven't done apply in 30 years. Then you're long overdue. And so I went. That first class, I showed up in old sneakers and sweatpants. Everyone else wore ballet slippers. Most were half my age. Some had silver hair like mine. The room smelled of wood polish and liniment. The mirrors reflected a version of me I hadn't seen in decades. The teacher smiled kindly. "You danced once, didn't you?" I nodded. She turned on the music. And my body, though stiffer, slower, remembered. For the first time in years, I wasn't just a mother, or a widow, or a former waitress. I was Eleanor, the girl who once dreamed of stages and light. And I danced. Things kept blooming from there. Michael asked me to join them on vacation. Clara suggested we co-host Thanksgiving. For the first time, I was part of the planning, not just attending. They asked for my input on names when Clara found out she was expecting a baby. "You're going to be a grandmother," Michael said, tears welling in his eyes. I didn't know what to say. I'd waited years for the title not by name, but by presence. And now here it was. Not as a replacement for what I lost, but as a continuation of what endured. But healing is never a straight road. One night, months later, just before Clara's due date, I overheard something. They were in the living room. I was folding laundry in the guest room when I heard raised voices. Michael said, "She's trying too hard sometimes. It's like she wants to prove something." Clara's voice was low. "She's just finding her way back in." I know, but part of me still resents how complicated my childhood was. That hurt, more than I wanted it to, because I'd spent so many years thinking my only failure was being forgotten, and now I was being remembered, but not all the memories were kind. Later that night, Michael knocked on my door. He didn't know I'd heard, but I looked at him, and I asked anyway, "Do you think I failed you?" He froze, then sat at the edge of the bed. "No," he said, "but I think I carried pieces of blame around, and sometimes, when I see you now, I'm not sure how to hold both gratitude and grief at once." I nodded slowly. "That's okay," I said. "I carry that too. Every parent messes up in ways they don't see until it's too late to fix them. I can't undo the hard parts. I can only be here now." He reached over, gently held my hand. "You being here now is everything." Clara went into labor early. It was a stormy Tuesday night. Michael called me, his voice high and cracking. "We're at the hospital, it's happening." I rushed there in a raincoat and slippers, my heart racing like it hadn't in years. By the time I arrived, Michael was in scrubs. Clara was already deep in labor. "Can I stay?" I asked. He hesitated. "Clara wants you in the room." I blinked. "What?" "She says it's time this baby enters the world surrounded by every woman who made love possible." I held her hand. I whispered to her like I once whispered to Michael during his fevers. And when the baby came, when that first cry pierced the air, something ancient in me healed. A girl, red-faced, strong-lunged, full of life. They named her Hope Eleanor Johnson. I didn't cry. I wept. Because this tiny heartbeat was proof that love, though battered, forgotten, misplaced, still finds its way home, even if it takes a generation. Later, in the quiet of the hospital room, I held her close to my chest. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, and I thought of every night I'd spent alone, every ache, every sacrifice, and how none of it was wasted. Because in the end, I wasn't just a shadow in my son's past. I was a living thread in his future. In the weeks after Hope was born, I found myself visiting almost every day. Not because I was asked to, but because I was wanted. Clara would text in the morning. "Can you come by around 10? She sleeps best in your arms." Or sometimes, I tried singing. "She only stops crying when you hum that lullaby." That lullaby, it was the same one I used to sing to Michael when we lived in the tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a radiator that coughed through the night. Funny how babies remember what parents forget. Hope was sweet, quiet mostly, but strong. She had Clara's dark hair and Michael's eyes. When I held her, I felt something anchor inside me again. Like I finally belonged, not out of obligation, but legacy. And every time I left their house, I'd walk slower. Stay at the door a few seconds longer. Because inside that home, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a part of something again. Then, one Thursday in May, I got a phone call. It wasn't Michael. It was Clara. Her voice was shaking. "There's been an accident. Michael, he's okay, but he's at the hospital. Please come." My heart jumped so fast I dropped the phone. My fingers couldn't even find the keys. My body felt like it was moving underwater. When I got to the hospital, Clara was pacing the hallway, her eyes red, hope cradled against her chest. "He was on his way to pick up diapers," she said through tears. A car ran a red light. His car flipped. I couldn't speak. The world felt like it narrowed to that white hallway and her voice. He's awake, she whispered. But they said there might be spinal damage. He can't feel his legs. Seeing Michael in that hospital bed broken, bruised, scared was a kind of pain I didn't have words for. He looked at me as I walked in, his voice cracking. Mom. I sat beside him and took his hand. You're here, he whispered. Always, I said. Always. He cried then, not for the pain, not for the prognosis, but because life had spun him around again, just when everything seemed settled. I don't want to be a burden, he said. Not to Clara. Not to Hope. Not to you. I leaned close. You were never a burden. Not as a child. Not now. And if you ever say that again, I'll remind you who changed your diapers and worked 2 jobs without ever saying the word burden. He smiled weakly. You're stronger than me. No, I whispered. We're strong because of each other. The rehab was long, painful, frustrating. There were days he wanted to quit. Nights Clara called me in tears. But we got through it. Because that's what family does, the kind that fights, falters, forgives, and shows up anyway. I moved into their guest room for 2 months. I cooked, held Hope, reminded Clara to sleep, and sat with Michael when the silence became too heavy. One afternoon, during physical therapy, Michael asked the nurse to leave the room. He turned to me and said, I don't think I would have made it through this without you. I smiled. You'd have found your way. No, he insisted. I forgot how to fight. You reminded me. Then he reached into the drawer beside his bed and handed me another envelope. My stomach clenched. I hated envelopes. But this one had no printing, no titles, no assumptions. Just one word, written in his hand. Mom. Inside was a letter. Mom. I've spent my whole life thinking strength meant standing alone. But after everything, your silence, your presence, your forgiveness, I finally understand. Strength is knowing when to hold on and when to let yourself be held. I forgot you, and yet you never forgot me. I see now that love doesn't die when we don't name it. It only waits, like you did, patient, quiet, strong. I want Hope to grow up knowing who her grandmother really is. Not the woman who was once left off a wedding invitation, but the woman who was always at the center of it all. You are the root, and we are the branches. And everything good that grows from us comes from you. Love. Michael. I cried when I read it. Not because it erased the pain, but because it honored it. That's all we ever want, isn't it? Not perfection, just recognition. A year passed. Hope took her first steps toward me. Michael walked again, slowly, with a cane. Clara opened a little bakery and named the blueberry tart Eleanor's Kiss. Life didn't go back to what it was. It grew into something better. One night, sitting on the porch swing, Michael beside me, Hope playing at our feet, I asked him, do you ever think about how close we came to not coming back from that silence? He nodded slowly. All the time. I used to wonder if I was too proud, I said. If walking out of your wedding was a mistake. He looked at me, eyes full of quiet gratitude. That was the moment that saved us. You reminded me who you were. I nodded. You reminded me who we were. People often talk about motherhood like it ends when the child grows up. But it doesn't. It evolves. From bottles to heartaches. From lullabies to silence. From discipline to distance, and, if you're lucky, to return. I didn't raise a perfect man. I raised a human one. And through every misstep, I got to be human too. Loved. Flawed. Seen. Years from now, when I'm gone, and Hope finds that old photograph, the one from her father's graduation. I hope she turns it over, reads the faded words on the back, and knows that she comes from a line of women who never stopped loving, even when they were left behind. Because love, real love, doesn't always arrive wrapped in bows and names on envelopes. Sometimes it stands alone, uninvited, unseen, but still, it shows up. And sometimes, showing up is everything.